it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Ananda Lima, who will be giving a talk called, "What the Hell is This Doing Here? Crafting the Devil, the Supernatural in Literary Fiction." Ananda Lima is a poet, fiction writer, and translator, the author of Craft, Stories I Wrote for the Devil, which is just out from Tor Books, the poetry collection Motherland, winner of Black Lawrence Press's Hudson Prize, as well as 4 chapbooks. She has been awarded the inaugural WIP Fellowship by Latinx in Publishing, has served as a mentor at the New York Foundation for the Arts Immigrant Artist Program, and currently serves as a contributing editor at Poets and Writers. She holds an MA in Linguistics from UCLA and an MFA in Creative Writing and Fiction from Rutgers University, Newark. In fall 2024, she'll be the Flagler College Storytellers Author in Residence. Originally from Brazil, Ananda lives in Chicago. I know Ananda as my pressmate at Black Lawrence Press, which published our poetry collections around the same time. And from that one year, we lived in Chicago at the same time and read together at the Hungry Brain. Ananda infuses dazzling imagination, sharp intellect, sly humor, and general delight into any space she enters. And we're so lucky that she's making a stop at the 11th Hour Lecture Series while she's on a book tour for Craft, Stories I Wrote for the Devil. Craft has received starred reviews from, count them, Kirkus Reviews, Publishers Weekly, and Library Journal, which described it as one of the most original and unforgettable reads of the year. Craft is available at Prairie Lights Books, where Ananda will be reading tonight at 7 in conversation with festival instructor Ren Archimone. Please welcome Ananda Lima.
Hi, everybody. It's so lovely to be here. Thank you so much, Becca, for this wonderful introduction and for having me here. It's such a lovely stop. I heard great things about the festival. It's great to be a part of it, even though it's very quickly this year. So we're going to be talking about the supernatural in literary fiction. I have this picture here. This is from folk art in Brazil. I grew up with this kind of imagery. They love the devil. And usually, the devil is a little bit scary, but people end up tricking the devil versus the other way around. Like they sell their souls and they find a way not to pay. And that's kind of how it goes. But we'll be talking a little bit about not only the devil, but ghosts and other supernatural things in fiction. And I have these. You don't have to read everything. I'll point to where you have to read. Now, usually I love doing interactive things, but I think it's always challenging. So I think, how can we do that in this space? I have a sheet going around of your favorite devils, ghosts, etc. in either movies or songs. Please add it there. I'll take a picture and add it to the doc later. And another thing is, if you doodle, please doodle one of these 3 things. Draw a little ghost and with a little speech bubble, and that speech bubble is for you to fill out. The ghost is saying hello to you. Okay, so try it out. Or draw a little devil and have the devil give you your fortune for the day, like what is going to happen today. Or you sort of walk past a witch who's very busy, and she's telling you, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't stop now. I'm doing X, Y, and Z." So there's your little doodles that you can do it either now or later, just to keep your hands busy and get yourself active. Now, we are going to talk about creatures, supernatural things in literary fiction. This is just a description that is out there for this lecture. But like summarizing the bigger questions that we are talking about today is, what are the ghosts doing in other writers' work? What are they doing there other than just being fun? And being fun is a good reason too. But usually they are doing other things as well. And what do you want them to do for you in your own work? So the second question you don't have to answer now is just something that I want to sort of awake in us in this lecture. Okay. Good. now, one thing that I put there right in the title is the word literary fiction, right? So literary fiction is like, what is literary fiction? Often when people say that, they are kind of doing it, not always, but oh, this is literary fiction. It's like a fancy thing, not that other stuff. But that is not at all what I'm doing there. I put literary there because that's my background. That's what I know more. But there's also amazing stuff there in genre fiction too that you can learn from. And some of the books I mentioned here today are in the boundary. So it's more out of respect for genre than the other way around that I put literary there. And I have some experience with this that is recent, which is fun. So I wrote my book as a literary person, and then Tor bought it, which I love. And then when they came back with a marketing description, that's ages after I've been working with them, like it's about to come out. And then I see they're listed as horror. Like that's how they classify the book. And I was delighted because I'm so scared of horror. I cannot watch a horror movie. And I thought it would be hilarious. So just goes to show how arbitrary these things are sometimes. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to start. So the way this is going to go is I'm going to go through different sort of big picture uses of ghosts and devils and like what they do in the text. And I'm going to point out the uses to you, but it doesn't mean that in those texts they're only doing that. That is just what I'm highlighting. But I'll start with an experience as a reader. So as a teenager, I read 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, right? And that was a long time ago that I was a teenager, right? And I still remember, I forgot what was happening in the book for a long time. I didn't remember all the Aurelianos and stuff. It all got mixed up. But I still remember the scene from the very first time I read it. It really stayed in there. And it is the trickle of blood scenes. Now, if you have read the novel, do you remember the trickle of blood scene? And maybe if you haven't read it, that's also cool. But there's this scene where a trickle of blood came out under the door, crossed the living room, went out into the street, continued on in a straight line across the uneven surfaces, went down steps and climbed over curbs, passed along the street of the Turks, turned a corner to the right and another to the left, made a right angle at the Buendia house, went in under the closed door, crossed through the parlor, hugging the wall so as not to stain the rugs, went on to the other living room, made a wide curve to avoid the dining room table, went along the porch with the begonias, and passed without being seen under Amaranta's chair as she gave an arithmetic lesson to Aureliano Jose, and went through the pantry and came out in the kitchen where Ursula was getting ready to crack 36 eggs to make bread. So this paragraph is just one paragraph, and I didn't remember how long it was, but that picture stayed with me my whole life after I read this book. And I'm not going to read everything that I have here just so that you don't get scared. But this paragraph I read as a teenager, and it is about a mother who lost a son. The son died, and the blood is the blood of the son coming for the mother. Now, I hadn't had any big losses, like nobody had died yet in my life. And that I really understood this, and the picture stayed with me. So this is one example of many that we're going to see, where it's much more like the novelty of the picture and the weirdness of it. It really is a way to deeply touch your readers, in a way that this deeply touched me. Now, when you're writing, so we are all writers, when you're writing big things like love and grief and the loss of a son for a mother, right? There's many different ways to do it, and people do wonderful jobs in very realistic fiction there. But let's stop for a moment and just think if it was a very realistic scene, how do writers usually approach that? So I'll let you think for a moment as I talk through it. So great writers will often describe the body of the person in a way, what they're looking at. Let's say that the person is sort of denial and shock. They'll be looking at some weird thing, and there'll be some play with timing. They'll be in the kitchen, and they'll notice this very inane thing that somehow is tied to the sun, and there'll be a lot of body action going on, and that is totally great and legitimate. That would not have gotten to me at that age because I didn't understand this experience, but I did understand this. So there is different ways to do things, and they will have advantages and disadvantages, but this as a reader to me really got to me then. Another thing is that I feel like there's space for multiple ways of approaching grief. If every approach to grief was like this, I don't think that would be good. But if every approach to grief was that other realistic approach, I don't think that would be good either. It's such a big experience, and I think the non-realistic stuff really helps us carve a little understanding of that experience too. So that's kind of the vibe of everything I'm bringing today. Good. And it's weird to not have questions. We'll have questions later, so write them down. Okay, so one of the things that is a big theme of how to use the supernatural in literature is embodying abstractions, right? So that is the challenge that we have sometimes as a writer when you want to talk about grief, a love of these big, important, real abstractions that exist in our lives. And that was an example of embodying grief, right? So it's not so simplistic like that was grief, but it is trying to put that stuff into a thing, which is the blood, right? Going through the house. Good. So going with this use of embodying abstractions, I'm going to talk about a couple of different examples of the supernatural embodying big abstractions. So here's a book called A Haunting in Hialeah Gardens by Raul Palma. And this is recent, maybe a couple of years old. And I'll just read the very first line here. It was Christmas time in Miami, and Hugo hadn't been sleeping well because every time he tried, he'd felt his indebtedness drop into bed with him, this invisible thing. Sometimes it would take hold of his hand, kiss them, then wrap itself around the chest so that it hurt to breathe. So in this book, there is a devil figure, there's a deal with the devil, and there is medical debt. And the medical debt in this person's life creates a lot of precarity, and it takes over his life, right? Like, it's a very heavy thing. And it's funny, I was reading user reviews, consumer reviews for this, and people put trigger warnings because of the debt, because it's such a heavy, hard thing for people that they're like, prepare yourself because of the medical debt. So here he has this thing of debt and precarity, economic precarity, and he put that in the book as a deal with the devil, which is very fitting and kind of like in your face and obvious in a good way. He really wrote that. So it's embodying an abstraction through the supernatural. Now, one thing that I'm going to point out with this example and other good examples of embodying an abstraction with the supernatural is that the boundary of the abstract concept you have, grief, debt, precarity, is porous. So they don't say, okay, the devil is debt. It's porous. Like, debt will show up in many different ways in the novel, and the devil is a center for that abstract concept. Same with grief and the blood. So the blood is also lineage, is also ties, it's a bunch of stuff, but it's a center for that idea of grief. So when you're using as the supernatural to embody some abstraction, you don't make a one-to-one correspondence. They sort of bring that object there and let it radiate through the novel and let the boundary be porous, which creates a lot of beauty. Now, what that does is it frees you from the boundary of the abstraction. Not everything about my devil has to be about death. Not everything about my blood has to be about grief. It also allows you to complicate those abstractions. Because you made the blood be grief, you can see grief in different ways, and you can see it relating to different things in a way that you didn't before you had the object. So it allows you to understand and complicate your idea of that abstract concept when you let it live in the page. Here's another example of an abstract concept that was embodied with a supernatural in a novel. There's this book called The Devil in Silver by Victor Laval, and it has a devil creature, and the people in the novel call it the devil, and this devil is very scary. This is like a horror book. The devil is scary for the people there. But the way this devil was built, there is a mapping with the novel with the institutional horror of the people in the novel. So they are in a public mental institution in New York City that is not the fancy type. It's the one for people who have no relatives to claim them. And the way the institutional side of things works in the novel is terrifying. But it's terrifying in a very complex way. He doesn't make them like the nurses, the bad guys, and the inmates like all nice. It's complicated. But he throws that devil there as a center for that institutional horror of neglect and of not caring for these people. And the way he builds the devil, he uses all this imagery of how these people are treated outside of the institutional too. So there's like a matted hair and like this, he puts a lot of the people who are in the institution get into this devil. And the devil is very scary, but the devil is also seen whimpering and suffering at times, even though it remains a scary devil throughout the novel. So here, the devil embodies institutional neglect. And I'm just going to say, so that is the, and I put these here in your handout, which I'll tell you where to find the handout in a minute, but in your digital handout, that's for you to read later so you can remember what I said. We don't have to read it now, but that is the gist of it. Yes, so we have the devil as the supernatural is embodying abstraction in a way to understand and complicate the abstraction you're looking at, and not have a very simple one-to-one correspondence. Another thing that happens in that novel I just talked about, and some other examples that I'm going to talk about now, is that the supernatural can be a decoy. It can be a thing that allows you to do stuff that you may not be able to do otherwise, and allows you to be very much in people's face. So the example of the debt that I mentioned before, the book would be very, very preachy without a real devil there, because the devil is there and there's shenanigans and you try to see what's going to happen with that supernatural stuff. He's allowed to say all this stuff about that without people going like, why are you telling me what to do or whatever. Same with the devil in silver, with the mental institution. So, for example, I'm not going to read this, but this is talking about Esmond Green, which is a real person who died in a hospital in New York City. And it was a very, very sad case where she was neglected in a waiting room and nobody helped her. So it is the kind of thing that would work very well in an essay collection where people are up for this kind of thing. But he put a whole sort of small chapter talking about this tragedy in very sort of accusing ways And it works in the novel because you have all this devil stuff going on, and people have this fiction thread taking them. The horror and the devil sort of distract people from the fact that he's preaching to you, in the best ways. So I feel like in a lot of these books, the supernatural allows you to have space to say things that you may not if the supernatural was not there in this kind of book. Good. And you will get this, I'll tell you. I can also tell you now, but like if you don't have to do it now, but you can. So in my website, it's anandalima.com. If you put /handouts, it's there. But I'll repeat later. Okay, so another decoy. So we have this book, Bunny, by Mona Awad. It's a fantastic book. It is such a fun book. Bunny has these passages. It takes place in a MFA program. And it has all these passages that are hilarious. There's horror there. There's scary stuff. There's this Frankenstein-like creatures in it. But it's hilarious. I'm just going to sort of read a little passage. The Duchess nods. I absolutely love the way the erotic is rendered as a tactile, olfactory experience. Every time you read that poem, Bunny, it seems to possess you. They're all looking at me. I realize now with expectation, I'm supposed to say something. So great, I murmur. But it rings false. So I add, I love the cinnamon peels. So this is a person in workshop trying to impress everybody, And then, you didn't want to disrupt the purity of cinnamon, the Duchess observes. Exactly, Cupcake says, as though the Duchess has articulated a truth she's been trying to pin down for years. So the novel makes a lot of fun of the writer's workshop, which I think it's a fun thing for writers to read sometimes, Okay, I'll read the second passage in a second. But this novel, if it didn't have the monsters, it would be a very bitter novel, complaining about the workers, her MFA experience. Because it's funny and very sarcastic, but it would be a whole completely different thing. It would be for people who want a very sort of sarcastic experience, right? But this, because she has this supernatural stuff going on, she can do all this critique of the writer's workshop, and it does not feel like this person is just bitter about their MFA, So again, it's that decoy where the supernatural allows you to play much more with other things that are not the supernatural in your novel. I'm just going to read a little bit more of that novel here. Sorry, what are we supposed to call them again? Bunny looks at Bunny inquiringly, her eyes wide and open and innocent, fringed by fake, glittery lashes. What aren't they? Intertextual spaces? Fruitions? Hybrids? I thought we were calling them drafts. So these, I try not to spoil too much, but these are like Frankenstein-like creatures they're doing it. But they talk about them as if they were talking about manuscripts, which is really hilarious in the novel. But she does so much commentary about creativity and about being an outsider that is there, has the space to be there because of the supernatural shenanigans going on. Right? So we looked at two big themes, which is the embodying of abstraction and the decoy that lets you say things very much in your face because the ghost is there distracting people. All right. So just to mention a couple of more examples of either embodying the abstraction or the decoy or both. The Upstairs House by Julia Fine talks about postpartum depression. And it has this ghost, which is the children's books writer Margaret Wise Brown, who wrote Goodnight Moon. So she has that ghost there haunting them. And then she can say all these things about postpartum depression in a very, very lovely way. Also because nobody believes her that she's seeing this ghost, Another example of the same kind of thing, Orange World by Karen Russell. Has anybody seen this one? So even if you don't read the whole book, The New Yorker, I have a link here, has it in audio, so you can listen to that story too, and it's online. But it's also about that very terrible anxiety one has with a newborn. Again, the supernatural helps decoy and embody the abstraction there. Okay, good. Yes, and that is the same thing. Yes, and then I have these generative exercises here that we don't have time here, but you can do it at home, which is write an abstraction as a demon. So you go home and like make some abstraction be a demon and let it loose. Once you write it, once you decide this thing is my fear of X or whatever it is that you decide, once you decide, let it free, let it be its own thing. Don't try to contain it to the abstraction and see what you can come up with. All right. So we talked about decoy and embodying the abstraction, and these are all related always, but having a character in it too. So, we want rich characters usually, right? And we don't want necessarily sort of cardboard, very flat character all the time. We want to give it some depth. But when these things are ghosts, you kind of widen your tolerance for how flat or round they can be. You can make a very, very round, very rich, developed ghost, or you can make them super flat, because there's this weird space where the ghost becomes almost like a person's projection, a metaphor. There's a lot of space once it's a ghost. Here's an example that is very tiny, but I'm just going to summarize to you, or maybe I'll read. I'll just summarize. So this person, George Whitefield, I don't know if people know this person. I only knew through the story. It's a sort of old-time pastor from long ago. And in this story by Gwen Kirby, in the collection Shit Cassandra Saw, this ghost stands in the corner, haunting this protagonist who's having an affair, and he just calls, whore, 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 every time she walks past. And he's there preaching in the corner, and that's all he does for a long time. So she's being haunted by him. And sometimes he sort of softens a little bit to her, but always like just calling her names, and it's not a very well-developed character. He doesn't have like much of an arc or much internal psychology, but he's hilarious. And you don't feel like this character is not well-developed. It's just right. And I feel like once you have a ghost, you can play a lot with how much you want to develop that. Because a lot of times they're read as extensions of the psychology of the protagonist. So you have a lot of leeway. There's one example there. So having a ghost, having a supernatural character gives you a lot of freedom between how flat the character is going to be and how round it's going to be. It can go anywhere. Also, how abstract this idea is going to be and how concrete. It gives you a lot of leeway with what you're going to do, because you sort of break the expectation and people are up to whatever with the supernatural character. Good. Now, so we talked about destabilizing the character, embodying abstraction, decoy, giving you a lot of leeway with how much character development you have and how much play you're going to do. Now, I'm going to come to one of my favorite uses of supernatural and ghosts and devils, which is destabilizing the reader, and specifically destabilizing the reader's grip on what is real and certainty, making them uncertain on purpose. That is kind of what I love about these things. So I have a quote here. I will just read a little bit. And this is by Samantha Schweblin, who did this book, Fever Dream, as well as other ones. And And she says, there's this play between the real and the magical, what is possible to happen and what is impossible. I'm really interested in what happens in between. It is a very thin line in which sometimes you can't decide as a reader if one is at the realism side or the magical side. The unusual, the weird, does not usually happen, but it is possible that it happens. And that places the uncanny very close to the reader's skin. So this is like disjointed like that because the verbal interview that I just described. But yeah, so what happens in a lot of these novels, a lot of this work that deals with devils, some of them, devils and ghosts, some of them, they come out and act as if these things exist. And that is great. That works very nicely. But a lot of them hold back, and you don't know. You don't know for a long time. Is this somebody's imagination, or is there actually a ghost, right? So that is a lot of that. And then in real life, you may have your beliefs and be sure of things. But in the book, you don't know where it's going to go, because is this realistic or not? You don't know yet when you come in, especially in this book, Fever Dream, but a lot of them. The Devil in Silver, the one with the mental institution, plays a lot with that. The Julia Fine, the one with postpartum depression, plays a lot of that. Are there ghosts really in this novel, or is this somebody's imagination? So there's a lot of a thin line there that people play with, and I think a lot of amazing work comes out of this. Samantha Schweblin is like a master at this. It's really destabilizing. And you kind of like, you're very unsure. So talking about destabilizing the reader and what is real, I just want to do a very quick vibe check with these photographs. Now, all the photographs I'm showing you are realistic photographs in the sense that these are real things. There's no Photoshop or anything. Just realistic photographs. So this is a beautiful photograph. Has anybody been there to one of these places? It's just gorgeous. That's how it is, right? So they just framed it. This is reality framed from an angle. So that would be kind of a realistic novel. And this would be one that likes detail. You know, when you look at this picture close by, there's a lot of texture. There's a lot of depth. You see the things close. You see the things fast. There's a lot of detail and beauty, right? But this is a very realistic depiction. These are also realistic photographs, right? They are not manipulated except for the exposure in the camera. The top one seems very, very abstract and stripped. You lose a lot of those things that orient you. Same with the second one, and it looks a little eerie, but they are real photographs. Callahan really likes this. This is also a realistic photograph. Does anybody know what this is? I didn't put the title there. The title gives it away. It's a lakefront fence. It's a fence in front of the lake, right? These are real. There's nothing supernatural going. There's no Photoshop. There's nothing. But even if you're writing realistic things, you can still play with that thing that I was talking about. You just sort of end up on the other side, right? And this is very disorienting for the reader, this one. You kind of don't know what's going on until you read the caption, which I didn't put there, and you have this time of like, I don't know. Some people like that, some people don't, and that is okay, but that is what you're doing. So a lot of these novels use the supernatural to create something like this and reveal it slowly and make you work for what's going on. So here I put, we're not going to read this, but I put here, I'll read like maybe 3 sentences or something. This is Fever Dream by Samantha Schweblin that I mentioned before. This is an extreme case of disorientation. So this is a novel that I love, and a lot of my friends are like, I hate it, you know, because it's very disorienting, especially in the beginning. This is the very, very beginning of the book. They're like worms. What kind of worms? Like worms all over. It's the boy he's talking, murmuring into my ear. I'm the one asking questions. Worms in the body? Yes, in the body. Earthworms? No, another kind of worms. It's dark and I can't see. The sheets are rough. They bunch up under my body. I can't move, but I'm talking. It's the worms. You have to be patient and wait. And while we wait, we have to find the exact moment when the worms come into being. Why? Because it's important. It's very important for us all. I try to nod, but my body doesn't respond. What else is happening in the yard outside the house? Am I in the yard? No, you're not. But Carla, your mother is. I met her a few days ago when we first got to the vacation home. What is Carla doing? Now, this sample that I read is the very beginning of the book. And you see, when we mention house, which takes a while, we're not describing the house as like a Victorian. You just have a little like house like this, right? This goes on for pages and pages like that. You're not going to get a break for a while, you know? So this is kind of like this, right? Now, when you're playing with the supernatural and when you're playing that thin line, you can have this, or you can have this, or you can have this. There's a lot of space for you to play when you're writing the supernatural. But either way, that thin line destabilizes the reader's certainty. You want to make the reader, these writers want to make the reader uncertain, and that's why they're using the supernatural. That is one of the uses of the supernatural in fiction. Okay. And you can do that in more or less orienting ways. You can have a very standard ghost story where it's like the floor is creaking and you don't know what's happening, or you can have a very extreme kind of text like that. And there's a lot of spaces in between. Now, destabilizing the reader and making them less certain of things, certain of what is happening in their little world on their hand. There's an extension of that I really love. And I think the best book to illustrate that is A Brief History of 7 Killings by Marlon James. So he uses this destabilization of what is real to reclaim a narrative, right? So here is a person from Jamaica, a black writer from Jamaica, and he is writing about Jamaica's recent history, including CIA meddling with Jamaica, right? Now, you can imagine if he's writing a very, very realistic novel about that. There's a bunch of things going on in the world. One is like a bunch of conspiracy theories over there as soon as you say CIA, right? And then the other one is the official record, which is usually done by governments and people who control the information. So you have these two forces there kind of butting heads. And then there's what actually happened and the effects in the country, right? So all of this is going on when you're writing a historical novel about the 70s in Jamaica and CIA interference. There's a lot going on there, right? But what he does is the very get-go, he puts a ghost there. The ghost is telling the story, right? Now, if you're like on YouTube nitpicking and you're like, hang on a second, the CIA wasn't doing this year. It's like, yeah, it's fiction. There's a ghost in it. You know? So it really allows him to do a bunch of stuff because people are going to complain about factual things. It's like, duh, I have a ghost in it. What are you talking about? Right? So I think the ghost does wonders to this novel. And the rest of it, the part that is not ghostly, is very well researched. And it matches reality very closely, matches the record very closely. But he's able to go outside official record and do things that may be even true, but not supported, or things that he heard, things that are not like in the official, I don't know, CIA archives that is open to the people, or whatever. He can go a lot of ways because of this ghost. You know, he can avoid a lot of unproductive conversations because of this ghost. So he uses the ghost to claim this story and to claim this history for himself. Another one that does a little bit of this is the Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead, right? So because it's a supernatural railroad, right? Like it actually is like a trains, right? Then because he does this thing that did not happen, he can talk about it freely without people going like, hang on a second, that wasn't around from here to here. He opens up what he can do in his novel by adding this non-realistic thing. So, so the supernatural can let you talk about true things much more freely in this way. And I have here, this is just sort of the ghost talking, so you can see it. And then I'm going to sort of end these big themes on beloved, right? So beloved, it's not exactly the same thing, but there's something of that going on as well as many, many, many wonderful things. So there is a historical basis, right, for beloved, an enslaved person, right, who killed the children to free them. And that is the historical basis. But by actually going there into that liminal space with the ghost, or is it the ghost, or how does it work? She can go from that historical fact and go many, many other places and make something really massive and beautiful. And I'm just going to read this quote by Toni Morrison. In trying to make the slave experience intimate, I hope the sense of things being both under control and out of control would be persuasive throughout, that the order and quietude of everyday life would be violently disrupted by the chaos of the needy dead. The Herculean effort to forget would be threatened by memory, desperate to stay alive. To render enslavement as a personal experience, language must first get out of the way. So many beautiful things going on in this novel, language-wise and all over, but we see also a part of it is this embodying the abstraction with a supernatural thing, right? So we see a lot of those things we talked about in Beloved. We are embodying the abstraction with the supernatural thing, but we are not containing it to a neat boundary. We are letting that boundary be porous. And also, we are taking claim of a historical fact. All of these things are happening in Beloved. So when I say about the supernatural, ghosts and the devil in literary fiction, I just hope that I sort of made you think about the power and the room to play and the freedom that you can get from this. And even if you write very realistic fiction, I think there is a lot in there that you can learn from books like these. So very quickly, there's another Brazilian thing, is Sisha's pulling him back. So very quickly, we were talking about what are the ghosts doing in other writers' work. We sort of got a glimpse of some big pictures, things that you can do. We looked about what is real and what is truth. It opens up space for you to have more freedom to do what you want. It can reclaim truth, authority, and history, embody abstraction. It can also be done to experiment and play. And it's also fun. As I said, I wasn't talking about the fun, but it actually is also fun. A lot of this goes to very fun. Something that recurs in this discussion that I had is freedom. It gives you, it's a way to create freedom on the page for you, undoing clear boundaries and certainties, and to claim your history. And I'll just leave you with this question, which is, what do you want these ghosts and supernatural things to do with you? For your work. There's a lot of space there. And thank you so much. And while we prepare, let me just say that this handout, which I put a lot of extra goodies here, which is just samples of things and fun stuff, and a reading list in the back. I put it in anandalima.com/handouts. So it's in there if you want to download it. Download it sometime this month, because I take them down sometimes. Yes. Thank you so much.
Hi. So one thing that I struggle with when it comes to like demonic possession stories is this sense of passivity in the character, because something's taking over their body. So how do you maintain a sense of autonomy while you're writing a character that's being possessed?
Oh my gosh, I love it. Now, there's a little bit of possession in my book, but it's a very active possession because of what it is. I love that struggle, and I think that it's difficult, but if you have that character, I feel like the possession happens, I don't know in your book, but usually the possession happens not at the very end necessarily and not at the very beginning, right? There's going to be some struggle, right? Where this person is either freed or completely possessed or something like that. And I think that would be a very super interesting and rich space to explore. So I think it's hard because the possession is so passive, as you said, but I feel like that's exactly where it's going to be super interesting. Just thinking very, I don't know, high level, like plot, commercial way. I think that is such a great place to explore passivity, right? Because the person will really have to work on that to get out of that pickle, right? But I feel like yes, you're very right. It's very difficult, but it's also exactly why it's super interesting to look at that question. Oh, that's exciting. Yes. Good.
Hello, thank you for this wonderful talk. Because we all wrote down our favorite ghosts and devils, I was curious about your favorite ghost/devil that has maybe been in the back of your mind when you were writing.
I love that question. Thank you so much, and thank you, everybody. I'm going to take a picture. It's anonymous. I'll take a picture and put it in the doc, in the thing, the Google Doc one. I'll put this because I'm excited to see this. Thank you for completing. Thank you for the question. So I started this list just to give an example, and I put there Volan and Master Margarita because I love the Master Margarita. I think it's just such a fun, amazing book, and it's so chaotic in the best way. So I love that Volan because he's a devil, and he does some pretty dicey stuff, but he doesn't always. He's kind of reasonable a lot of the time. He's funny, and I love the mirror between Master Margarita and us today because they were in a repressive, atheistic society, right? And how that played out. And then thinking about today and how I recognize myself in that situation, even though the situation is flipped. So I love the devil and the whole book. But there's many that I love out there. Yes. The one that I said about the posthumous, there you go, posthumous memoirs of Brás Cubas, because I only know the name in Portuguese. That is a hilarious ghost. I really like that ghost too. Yes, thank you. Yes, good. Okay, great. So this is awesome because I would love for you to take those prompts, and it doesn't have to be now because I know we have a very sort of busy day, but when you have some time, write a little demon and see what happens there. And if you have any questions, let me know today or let me know later on at Prairie Lights tonight. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Ananda. All the festival instructors this week are going to be like, what are all these ghosts doing showing up in the stories and essays? All right, so the 11th hour lecture series will be back tomorrow with Zach Savage giving a lecture called Ditties and Frolics and Aches, Poetry and Song. Zach, are you here? Did I see? There's Zach. So come back tomorrow for Zach. A reminder that Ananda is reading from Craft tonight at 7 at Prairie Lights, so please check that out and learn more about Ananda's Devil. And thanks for coming. Have a great lunch, and we'll see you tomorrow, hopefully.